In a dramatic escalation of tensions across the continent, Europe is witnessing a powerful wave of discontent, manifesting in large-scale and at times violent demonstrations. The timing of these protests is particularly striking, erupting in close proximity to major policy decisions being finalized within the European Union's corridors of power. This confluence of high-level politics and ground-level fury has seen thousands of citizens, predominantly from the agricultural sector, descend upon the symbolic heart of the EU in Brussels. Their message, however, has gone far beyond peaceful dissent, spilling over into acts of arson and rioting that have targeted the very infrastructure, the institutions they hold responsible for their plight. These events are not isolated outbursts, but represent a deep and growing chasm between the Bloc's policy-making elite and a significant portion of its population feeling left behind, culminating in scenes of open rebellion on the streets of the European capital. The unrest underscores a brewing crisis where economic anxieties and political decisions are colliding with explosive force. The chronology of this recent unrest paints a vivid picture of a protest movement reaching its boiling point. Against the backdrop of several contentious EU decisions, farmers from across the continent organized and converged on Brussels. While agricultural discontent has been simmering for months, fueled by a range of grievances from environmental regulations to trade policies, the latest demonstrations appeared to be a direct and immediate reaction to a specific set of high-stakes political maneuvers. In what has been described as an emergence of rage, thousands of farmers mobilized there. Tractors and blockaded key areas around the European Parliament and other major EU institutions. This show of force was timed with breathtaking precision, occurring almost immediately after EU leaders announced they had finalized a landmark €90 billion aid package for Ukraine, a decision of immense geopolitical significance. This timing suggests that the aid package, while not solely responsible for the farmers' anger, acted as the final catalyst, a tipping point for a community already feeling besieged. The juxtaposition of a massive financial commitment to a nano-EU nation against the perceived neglect of their own economic struggles created a potent symbol of misplaced priorities in the eyes of the protesters. The ensuing scenes were chaotic and violent. The protest, which began as a demonstration of agricultural might with convoys of tractors, quickly morphed into something far more volatile. Reports from the ground documented the infiltration of the protests by extremist groups who seemed intent on escalating the situation. This led to shocking acts of public disorder, including the deliberate setting of fires near the EU headquarters and clashes with riot police. The air in the European quarter filled with the smoke of burning tires and the sting of tear gas, transforming a political protest into a full-blown riot. These acts of vandalism and violence signify a dangerous shift. Frustration with policy has hardened into direct and destructive outrage against the institutions of the European Union itself, marking a profound breakdown in the social contract. To fully understand the depth of this rage, one must look beyond the immediate catalyst of the Ukraine aid agreement and examine the broader context of economic dissatisfaction and a pervasive feeling of abandonment that has taken root within Europe's agricultural community. While the timing of the protests strongly correlates with the aid package announcement, the underlying causes are systemic and have been accumulating for years. These large-scale demonstrations are the culmination of persistent economic pressures and a growing sense that the agricultural sector is being sacrificed for the sake of the EU's wider political and environmental ambitions. At the heart of this discontent lie the bloc's stringent environmental regulations, often referred to as the Green Deal. Farmers argue that these rules, while well-intentioned, can impose a crushing burden of compliance, dramatically increasing their production costs and making it nearly impossible to operate profitably. They are required to meet some of the highest environmental and animal welfare standards in the world, yet they feel this commitment is not matched by adequate financial support or protection from external competition. This leads directly to the second major pillar of their grievance: prices and imports. European farmers find themselves in a fierce battle for survival against a flood of cheap imported goods. These products often come from countries where producers are not subject to the same strict, costly regulations, creating an uneven playing field. This issue has been acutely highlighted by trade liberalization measures, including previous tariff removals on agricultural products from Ukraine. While intended as a gesture of support, This policy resulted in a surge of Ukrainian grain and other produce entering the EU market, depressing prices and undercutting local farmers who could not compete. The sight of their own governments facilitating this competition while simultaneously imposing more expensive farming methods has fostered a deep sense of betrayal and economic desperation. This potent cocktail of regulatory pressure and market competition has pushed many farming families to the financial brink, making them feel that their livelihoods are being systematically dismantled by policies enacted in faraway Brussels by officials who are disconnected from the realities of rural life. Ultimately, the fiery protests in Brussels are a stark manifestation of the growing and dangerous tension between the macroeconomic and geopolitical strategies of the European Union and the tangible economic burdens being shouldered by its citizens, particularly those in the agricultural community. The image of the EU headquarters under siege by the very people who produce the continent's food is a powerful symbol of a widening disconnect. On one hand, Brussels is navigating a complex global landscape. It's making strategic decisions like the Ukraine aid package to project stability and uphold its geopolitical interests. These are grand, top-down policies designed to address continental and international challenges. On the other hand, there is the lived reality of farmers, small business owners, and workers who experience these policies not as abstract strategies, but as direct impacts on their income, their competitiveness, and their way of life. The current crisis demonstrates that these two realities are increasingly on a collision course. The agricultural community, in this case, feels it is bearing a disproportionate share of the cost for the EU's green transition and its foreign policy commitments. Without receiving adequate protection or compensation, their protest is a cry of economic desperation, a declaration that they can no longer absorb the costs of policies that they believe favor international trade partners and environmental agendas over their own survival. This event is more than just a riot over a single policy. It is a reflection of a deeper crisis of representation and trust. It raises fundamental questions about the EU's ability to balance its ambitious goals with the welfare of its core constituencies. If the bloc cannot bridge this gap and demonstrate that its policies can deliver prosperity and security for its own people, not just for its geopolitical partners, the scenes of rage and fire in Brussels may become a recurring feature of the European political landscape, signaling a future of increasing instability and division. The challenge for Brussels is to prove that its vision for Europe includes and supports all of its citizens, lest it finds itself governing a union that is fracturing from within.